We are Uniper, and we deliver gas and electricity to our customers every day. With all our experience and Uniper's central role in the European energy system, we are like the heart that drives the body.
Sichere Energie ist unser Geschäft. Wir beschaffen, erzeugen und speichern zuverlässig Energie in Europa und handeln damit weltweit. Uniper leistet mit seinen engagierten Mitarbeitenden einen entscheidenden Beitrag zur Versorgungssicherheit, insbesondere in Deutschland, Großbritannien, Schweden und den Niederlanden. Uniper ist einer der größten Gasimporteure Europas. Unsere Gasspeicher versorgen Industrie und Haushalte zuverlässig mit Gas und Wärme. Unsere Kraftwerke gleichen Schwankungen in der Verfügbarkeit von erneuerbaren Energien aus und halten die Stromnetze stabil. Uniper-Kraftwerke sind eine wesentliche Reservekapazität im Netz. Wir stellen beispielsweise 1/4 der Kapazität bereit, die in Deutschland systemrelevant ist. So sorgt Uniper auch an Tagen ohne Wind und Sonne dafür, dass das Licht nicht ausgeht. Zudem erzeugen wir CO2-freien Strom. Unsere zahlreichen Wasserkraftwerke an Flüssen und Seen in Deutschland und Schweden helfen uns, unsere CO2-Ziele zu erreichen und die Versorgung zu sichern. Uniper wird immer grüner. Wir planen in den kommenden Jahren etwa 8 Milliarden Euro in die Transformation und Dekarbonisierung unseres Unternehmens zu investieren. Damit beschleunigen wir die Energietransformation und gewährleisten gleichzeitig Versorgungssicherheit. Zu dieser Transformation wird auch der Aufbau einer Wasserstoffwirtschaft gehören. Uniper, Pionier auf diesem Gebiet, trägt wesentlich dazu bei, durch den Aufbau der Infrastruktur zur Wasserstofferzeugung, durch unsere Aktivitäten entlang der Wasserstoffwertschöpfungskette, einschließlich Beschaffung und Handel, und indem wir einen Teil unserer Gasspeicher in Wasserstoffspeicher umwandeln. Uniper versorgt seine Kundinnen und Kunden, Stadtwerke, Industrieunternehmen und Netzbetreiber verlässlich mit der Energie, die gebraucht wird. Genau dann, wann sie gebraucht wird. Auch in Krisenzeiten. Unser bewährtes Team von Expertinnen und Experten sind für das Energiesystem so wichtig wie das Herz für den Körper. Unsere Energie, unser Portfolio und unsere globalen Beziehungen treiben die Industrie und das tägliche Leben an. Uniper, the beating heart of energy.
By being this beating heart, you have to be stable, you have to be reliable, and that's what we are.
Guten Morgen, sehr geehrte Damen.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In my capacity as chairman of the Supervisory Board of Uniper SE, and according to the company's Articles of Association, I will chair this meeting. I hereby open this year's AGM of our company. On behalf of the Supervisory Board and the Management Board, I'd like to extend a cordial welcome to you, our shareholders, our shareholder representatives, media representatives, and everybody following the proceedings of this AGM via audio and video link online.
Die Hauptversammlung findet auf
The AGM will be held as a virtual annual general meeting by resolution of the Management Board in accordance with Section 17, Paragraph 2, Sentence 1 of the Articles of Association of Uniper SE and Section 118A, Paragraph 1, Sentence 1 of the German Stock Corporation Act at the venue of the annual general meeting without the physical presence of shareholders and their proxies, of course with the exception of the proxies appointed by the company. I would now like to welcome my colleagues on the Supervisory Board who are here today. I'd like to start with Harald Seegatz. He's the Deputy Chairman of the Supervisory Board from the employee side, and he's sitting here next to me on the stage. The other Supervisory Board members of Uniper SE, with the exception of Victoria Colombi, who for personal reasons is not able to attend this meeting, are also present here in the meeting room. And we are showing them here all together in the live stream, and if necessary, they can all individually communicate with me at any time. I would also like to welcome the Board of Management of Uniper SE, consisting of our Chief Executive Officer, Michael Lewis, our Chief Financial Officer, Dr. Jutta Dönges, our Chief Operating Officer, Holger Kretz, and our Chief Commercial Officer, Dr. Carsten Poppinger.
Persönlich anwesend ist auch der Notar.
The Notary Public, Professor Dr. Leif Böttcher, is also present, and he will keep the minutes of this annual general meeting.
Zudem sind die Stimmrechtsvertreter.
And then we have also the designated proxies who have been nominated by the company.
Ich möchte Ihnen einige Hinweise zum Ablauf
Let me share with you a number of details on how this virtual meeting will be held.
simultan
We are offering simultaneous interpretation of the entire annual general meeting from German into English.
Einstellung im Pass.
If you want to listen to the translation, you can change the language settings in the password-protected online service. Let me also point out that video or audio recordings or recordings of this video broadcast are not permitted.
Ich stelle fest, dass die heutige
I note that the invitation to this AGM was published in due time and form in the Federal Gazette dated the 20th March 2025.
alle veröffentlichen im
All publications in connection with the invitation to the AGM have been available on the company's website since the invitation to this AGM was sent out. This applies to the required documents as well as to a copy of the Articles of Association specifying the amendments proposed under Agenda Item 8.
die Einberufung und erforderliche
The invitation and required documents are also available here today in the meeting room. The notary has verified this.
Die Einberufung der Hauptversammlung wurde Ihnen mitgeteilt.
So you've been informed about the invitation to the AGM. The company has not received any requests for additional agenda items, which means we're only going to deal with the agenda as published in the Federal Gazette.
Vor der Hauptversammlung hat der
In the run-up to the AGM, and in due time and form, the Association of Ethical Shareholders submitted counter-motions on agenda items 3 and 4.
Des Weiteren hat Herr
Additionally, Mr. Bodo Oppermann has submitted counter-motions to agenda items 5, 7, and 8 in due time and form.
sämtliche der vorgenannten
All of the counter-motions I just mentioned were published on the company's website, and I will come back to this in a minute.
weitere form- und fristgerechte Gegenanträge oder
The
Wahlvorschläge
company has not received any other counter-motions or election proposals in due time and form. On Uniper SE's website, we've also provided you with information on data protection of Uniper's shareholder rights.
der Notar, Herr Dr.
The Notary Public, Dr. Böttcher, will file a copy of the invitation documents, including the agenda and the full wording of the proposed resolutions with the minutes of this AGM.
sämtliche Stellungnahmen
Any comments from shareholders the company has received in due time and form were made accessible via the company's password-protected online service to all shareholders or their representatives registered for the annual general meeting. I would like to point out that any motions, election proposals, questions and objections to resolutions passed at this AGM, which were submitted as part of the comments, will not be considered during the AGM.
Ich stelle fest,
Ladies and gentlemen, I note that the invitation to this AGM was published according to the relevant legal requirements and in line with the provisions of our Articles of Association. The official area of today's AGM covers this room at the venue from which we are broadcasting the annual general meeting proceedings. The list of participants is currently being prepared. Any changes in attendance which occur during the AGM will be recorded in the list of participants on an ongoing basis. Once the list has been prepared, and once the attendance figures are available, I will give you the current attendance count. If there are any changes in attendance, I will give you the updated figures before I announce the results.
ich weise darauf hin, dass nur
I would also like to point out that only shareholders or shareholder representatives who are electronically connected to the AGM may exercise shareholder rights at the annual general meeting. Shareholders are considered to be electronically connected to the virtual general meeting if they are properly registered for the AGM and have successfully logged in to the password-protected online service.
dies gilt ebenso
This also applies to proxies other than the company's proxies.
Elektronische Versammlung zugeschalteten Aktionäre.
Shareholders or their proxies who have joined the meeting electronically will be granted the right to speak at the meeting by means of video communication. Ladies and gentlemen, I hereby declare that the right to information and the right to ask questions pursuant to Section 1311 of the German Stock Corporation Act may only be exercised by means of video communication.
Aktionärinnen und Aktionäre bzw.
Shareholders or their representatives who wish to take the floor, including any motions, election proposals, or requests for information, will require an internet-enabled device with a camera and microphone, as well as a stable internet connection to connect to the AGM for the purpose of making a contribution. It is not necessary to install software components or apps on the device. Please bear in mind that you must ensure appropriate video and audio transmission. If the functionality of the video communication is not ensured during the review by the company will reject the request to speak. You may only request the floor via the password-protected online service. For your contributions and questions, you are required to use the Request to Speak button, which you will find in the main menu in the online service. This is the virtual Request to Speak desk. When you take the floor, you may also submit motions and election proposals. If you wish to submit a motion or election proposal outside of your regular contribution, you may use the button Submit a Motion. Other than that, the procedure is the same as when requesting the floor. During the AGM, I'm going to divide speakers into groups. And when I call your name for the upcoming block of speakers, a dialog window will open in the online service where you will find the respective button. If you click on the button, you will be able to proceed to the virtual waiting room. In order to avoid delays, I would like to ask you to go to the virtual waiting room without undue delay once the dialog window pops up. There, after you've entered, our technical staff will welcome you. And before you can address the AGM, they will, together with you, check the image and sound transmission so that you may speak to the meeting with as little disruption as possible. Once this technical check has been successfully carried out, I'm going to ask you to go to the virtual stage so that your speech will be broadcast live to the AGM. When you have finished, you will be directed back to the virtual waiting room where the technical staff will bid you farewell. Please note that with a view to an orderly process and in the interest of all shareholders, I reserve the right to limit shareholders' rights to ask follow-up questions and to speak. Shareholders or their representatives who have duly registered and are electronically connected to the AGM may declare objections to resolutions at the AGM to the notary public, responsible for recording the minutes of the annual general meeting, or to request that minutes be taken in accordance with Section 1315 of the German Stock Corporation Act. This will be done by means of electronic communication via the password-protected online service in accordance with the procedures specified there. Such notification is possible from the opening of the annual general meeting until it is closed by the chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to make a few remarks regarding the vote. Shareholders or their representatives who have duly registered for the AGM may only cast, amend or revoke postal votes and issue, amend or revoke proxies and instructions to the company's proxies up to a point in time that I will determine later on in the course of the vote. Information on exercising voting rights can also be found in the invitation. The company's proxies will vote on the individual agenda items by releasing the votes stored in the system in accordance with your instructions. The postal votes received in due time will also be taken into account when determining the voting result. The voting process and counting of votes will be monitored by the notary, who has checked the technical requirements for this in advance. Ladies and gentlemen, I have now received the current list of participants. It lists the shareholders who have joined or are represented at the meeting electronically and their proxies who have joined the meeting electronically. And we also show the number of postal votes required. I would like to announce the current attendance figures. At today's AGM, the number represented by shareholders electronically connected, 412,886,606 shares are represented, and this is also the number of votes. This corresponds to 99.14% of the company's registered share capital. Additionally, we've received postal votes in the amount of 57,336 no-par value shares. In total, 412,934,942 votes are represented. I repeat, 412,943,942 votes are represented, which corresponds to 99.15% of the company's registered share capital. The list of participants can be viewed in the password-protected online service and will be continuously updated until the end of the AGM. Ladies and gentlemen, you are now familiar with the 8 items on the agenda from the invitation, so I'd like to be brief in this respect. Item 1 is about the presentation of the annual financial statements and the consolidated financial statements of Uniper SE for the fiscal year 2024, together with the combined management report for Uniper SE and the Uniper Group, and the report by the Supervisory Board. Mr. Lewis will now report on the situation of your company. Mr. Lewis, you have the floor.
Sehr geehrte Aktionärinnen und Aktionäre.
Shareholders, thank you for attending our annual general meeting today. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the entire Uniper Management Board. 2024 was a year of normalization for Uniper. We left the energy crisis of 2022 behind us. In financial terms, this means that we made important progress in fulfilling EU remedies, thanks above all to 2023 and 2024, which were financially special years. We thus kept an important promise arising from the stabilization package with the German federal government. One significant step was the repayment of about 3.1 billion euros to the Federal Republic of Germany in 2 stages. One tranche, one payment of roughly 500 million euros and another of roughly 2.6 million. This amount goes to the German Federal Treasury, billion, which benefits German taxpayers. This is more than just a number. It's a powerful indication, a powerful sign of your company's performance. Uniper isn't only stabilized, but also financially robust and profitable. Our balance sheet is strong. We finished 2024 with a net cash position of approximately 3.4 billion euros. Last year, Uniper also made important progress towards again being viable on the capital market. We've been executing a clear strategy for 2 years. We have an improved standalone credit rating. In addition, most of the disposals required by EU remedies have already been completed or are at an advanced stage.
haben will.
We already sold the maritime fuel business in the United Arab Emirates, our stake in the BBL gas pipeline, the Gurnu gas-fired power plant in Hungary, and our power portfolio in North America. Also, we've been working towards selling our stake in Latvia's Gāze, the Datteln 4 hard coal-fired power plant, and our district heating business in Germany since last fall. All these measures are being conducted judiciously in a way that makes business sense with business acumen and in close coordination with authorities. The deadline is year-end 2026. As you can see, Uniper has become a profitable company again. It's resilient, predictable, and reliable. Ladies and gentlemen, perhaps a newspaper article, a radio program, or even a podcast has already reminded you of today's significance, the significance of this date. Today is the 8th of May, 2025. World War II in Europe ended exactly 80 years ago. Why am I saying this? Because clouds are gathering, clouds heralding new challenges. One of these challenges is energy security in a broader sense, not just supply as a technical matter. Uncertainty has been on the rise and new conflicts are emerging. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine is continuing. The Middle East remains unstable, especially the situation near the Gaza Strip. Tensions have been rising in the Indo-Pacific. Rules-based global trade is under pressure, and the situation between India and Pakistan seems to be escalating. All of this has consequences, including for our scope for action in Europe, for our competitiveness, and for energy supply. Uniper believes its role in this situation is to support our current and future clients, customers, and trading partners. I also consider this an obligation arising from the government bailout following the gas crisis. More specifically, this means doing everything we can to ensure that power, gas, and heat are available and reliable in our markets at all times. We're doing this by operating and building new assets, importing gas and other energy sources to Europe, offering energy storage options, and much more. Europe's energy must be secure. This is where Uniper does its part. Secure and competitive energy is essential. It is the very basis for industrial value creation and social cohesion in Europe. This should be a prerequisite, not an option. When energy becomes scarce and prices become volatile and high, companies lose their ability to plan for the future, and entire supply chains start to falter. This is certain death for industrial economies. Europe needs reliable energy at competitive prices. No industrialized nation can afford power outages caused by dark doldrums. Energy shouldn't be a social risk either. That's why Uniper stands for a clever, a judicious, smart energy transition, not for extreme ideological demands, but for pragmatic, resilient, technology-neutral solutions. Our approach is clear: a gradual, balanced transformation that's purposeful, but yet without any blinkers. What does this mean? It's already apparent today. Uniper is systemically relevant throughout Europe. We meet more than 20% of Germany's gas demand and are its largest operator of gas storage facilities, which enables us to ensure flexibility in supply. Our hydropower plants, we have more than 100 in Germany alone, use renewable energy, and they're the foundation of our power output. We also provide about 1/4 of Germany's grid reserve capacity, which makes an important contribution to system stability. We're Sweden's top hydropower producer and have a stake in all the country's nuclear power plants. We also help secure its power system with 1.7 gigawatts of conventional generating capacity. We operate a flexible 4.5 gigawatt generation portfolio in the UK, in the United Kingdom, and our gas storage facility there supplies around 230,000 households. Our LNG capacity and our 24/7 dispatch service enable us to make an important contribution to Britain's security of supply. We sent a special message by decommissioning our last coal-fired power plant, which ended coal-fired power generation in the United Kingdom. Our Maasvlakte energy hub near Rotterdam helps secure the Netherlands' energy supply. It combines gas imports and power generation and meets 7% of the country's power demand. And co-firing biomass enables us to reduce Maasvlakte's climate impact by 15%. Our smart, efficient district heating networks supply around 140,000 Dutch households.
Für die Zukunft investieren wir rund 8 Milliarden Euro bis Anfang der 30.
Through the early 2030s, we intend to invest around 8 billion euros for the future. Examples include new hydrogen-ready gas-fired power plants, the recommissioning of Hapag, a 160-megawatt pumped storage hydropower plant that will bring stability to Germany's energy system. At 250 million euros, this is the biggest single investment in Uniper's history. Hapag is scheduled to re-enter service in 2028. We're exploring equipping gas-fired power plants in the United Kingdom with carbon capture technology to provide secure, clean baseload power. And we're aiming to develop up to 10 gigawatts wind and solar farms by the early 2030s to ready-to-build status. Our launch of 230 megawatts of renewables projects in 2024 was just the beginning.
Und dazu kommen LNG.
In addition, Uniper has LNG contracts with partners like Woodside. They amount to up to 2 million metric tons per year, which equals about 3% of Germany's gas requirements. That's a strong signal for resilience in geopolitically uncertain times. We're also forging hydrogen partnerships with several countries. This is how we shape the energy transition, by taking concrete, feasible and responsible action. One thing is clear, security of supply doesn't end at borders. It begins with foresight and global collaboration. Our judicious, moderate approach to the energy transition has remained consistent, because we're convinced that the energy transition will only be a truly successful project for everyone benefiting if we choose balance over one-sidedness and reason over extremes. Ladies and gentlemen, the Uniper Marathon was held in Düsseldorf on the 27th of April. My colleague on the board, Holger, and I ran in the relay, and many of our employees participated in one of the 3 competitions. What I can tell you is that the moment of the baton pass is more exciting than you might think. You wait, you know what's coming, and yet everything depends on a successful handover. This experience reminds me of Germany's current political situation. The direction, climate neutrality, is clear, but now the handover, the handoff matters. The transition from targets to framework conditions, from intention towards implementation. The start of Germany's new federal government marks the end of the period of preparation and coalition talks. A decisive phase is now beginning for our country's energy future. The task now is to achieve greater clarity. For example, Germany's power plant strategy needs to be clarified and worked out in detail. We welcome the fact that gas-fired power plants have been recognized as a necessary bridging technology. This bridge must be built swiftly, however, but also sustainably, by means of specific tender models, a technology-neutral setting, and fair burden sharing. Germany's capacity market needs clarity as well. We need a market designed in a way that it doesn't only make security of supply a policy objective, but that it also enables it from a business perspective. We see no alternative to a functioning capacity market. It must be open to all technologies, must be market-based, centrally organized, and capable of long-term planning. This is the only way to maintain grid stability in a system characterized by increasingly volatile output. And finally, the investment climate needs clarity. Investing needs to be fun again. Approval procedures must become simpler. Let us stick to the relay metaphor. If we begin a 4-stage race at a 6-person pace, we ultimately won't be able to achieve the desired 4-person pace, no matter how hard the last runners push themselves. Building new gas-fired power plants is the same. The longer we discuss the framework and the incentives, the less time we have towards the end. And once you've lost time, you can't make it up later. The construction of such plants, of such facilities, is complex. It can't be accelerated at will. But we are on the right track. For our part, we're prepared to invest in new gas-fired power plants, in renewables, and in renewable and low-carbon gases. Ladies and gentlemen, a successful company needs motivated employees. I'd therefore like to take this opportunity to thank our staff, our employees, for their outstanding performance in recent years. I'd also like to thank you, our shareholders. Thank you for your trust, your support, and your willingness to accompany us on the journey I've just outlined. Your investment in Uniper is an investment in the future of energy. I now look forward to your questions and to an open, constructive dialogue. Thank you.
Herr Lewis,
Mr. Lewis, I'd like to thank you for your report. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now move on to the report by the Supervisory Board. Ladies and gentlemen, the Supervisory Board discussed and adopted the report that you have received at a meeting on the 24th of February 2025. Today, I would like to focus on the main topics of the Supervisory Board's work. You will find the full report on pages 2 to 7 of the annual report. The annual report is publicly accessible on the website under the heading Annual General Meeting. In 2024, the Supervisory Board held 6 meetings of the full committee and also committee meetings to discuss the group's situation, in particular the implementation of the group strategy dating from 2023, the restoration of the capital market capacity, the global market environment, and the stabilization framework. The necessary resolutions were also passed in this regard. The Supervisory Board was informed regularly and promptly by the Board of Management about current developments. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now move on to the key areas of activity of the Supervisory Board. The 2024 reporting year was dominated by the green transformation and efforts to restore the capital market viability of the company. In 2024, significant progress was made in implementing projects to expand green and flexible generation. In the fall, Uniper responded to the changing market environment. The time frame for implementing individual investment projects related to the transformation was extended slightly. The focus was primarily on projects with the greatest contribution to growth and transformation, and in this context, Uniper realigned the steps to achieve CO2 neutrality, but it is sticking to its target date of 2040 for climate neutrality across the entire group. The Supervisory Board closely monitored and supervised the implementation of the new strategy established in 2023 and advised the Management Board in a changing market environment. Furthermore, the Supervisory Board in the fiscal year 2024 continuously monitored progress towards the planned phase-out of coal-fired power generation in 2029. In addition, the Supervisory Board continued to support the company in restoring its capital market viability in the past fiscal year. In March 2024, for example, Uniper successfully completed the early refinancing and increase of its syndicated credit line with a volume of 3 billion euros. The credit line with KfW was reduced by another 4.5 billion euros. Also in March 2024, the rating agency S&P Global confirmed Uniper's long-term credit rating and upgraded its standalone credit quality from B to BB. In addition, the gas supply relationship with Gazprom Export was formally terminated following an arbitration ruling in June 2024. The Supervisory Board continued to deal extensively with the group's economic situation, on which the Management Board provided ongoing information. Regarding the operating business, the Management Board kept the Supervisory Board informed, in particular about plant operations. Among other things, price developments on the national and international energy markets were discussed in detail. The Management Board provided the Supervisory Board with detailed information on development on the electricity and gas markets. Other key topics discussed by the Supervisory Board included the consequences of increasing geopolitical tensions and developments in energy policy and the regulatory environment. The Supervisory Board was also regularly informed about developments in the area of health, safety and environmental protection and sustainability. In this context, the Supervisory Board discussed, among other things, the results of the double materiality analysis. The Supervisory Board also discussed the medium-term plan for the years 2025 to 2027 in detail with the Management Board and, after thorough discussion, approved the budget for 2025. Finally, with regard to the auditor rotation required by law for the 2026 financial year, the Supervisory Board resolved to propose to the annual shareholders meeting that a new auditor be elected for the first quarter of 2026. This is the result of an intense dialogue between the Supervisory Board, the Audit and Risk Committee, the Management Board, and the Project Group, as well as a comprehensive tendering process. So, we would like to propose to you under Agenda Item 5, Deloitte GmbH Wirtschaftsprüfungsgesellschaft as the auditor for a possible review of the report for the first quarter of 2026. The Supervisory Board has decided to increase the basic remuneration for the Management Board on the basis of inflation adjustment. On the occasion of the decision on the remuneration of the Supervisory Board, which must be made by the annual shareholders meeting this year, an increase in the remuneration for the members of the Supervisory Board of 10% is proposed. The adjustment is based on the inflation adjustment for the members of the Management Board. It features on the agenda today under Item 8 for resolution by the Annual General Meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, the Supervisory Board has reviewed the annual financial statements of Uniper SE as per December the 31st, 2024, the Management Report, combined with the Group Management Report, and the consolidated financial statements prepared in accordance with IFRS. The audit report of the independent auditor with an unqualified audit opinion was also taken note of. The financial statements and the management report are available on the company's website. The other documents under agenda item 1 of today's AGM are also available there.
Der Aufsichtsrat erhebt
Based on the final results of its review of the documents, the Supervisory Board has no objections to raise.
Jahresabschluss der Uniper SE
The Supervisory Board approved and adopted the annual financial statements of Uniper SE prepared by the Management Board at its meeting on the 24th of February 2025. The Supervisory Board also approved the consolidated financial statements. The Supervisory Board approved the combined management report, in particular the statements on the company's future development. Under agenda item 2, the Supervisory Board, just like the Management Board, proposes to the annual general meeting that the net income for the 2024 fiscal year be appropriated to other revenue reserves. Starting with the capital reduction resolved by the extraordinary annual general meeting in December 2023, the accounting requirements for the payments of dividends have been met. However, no dividends may be paid out during the period of the stabilization measures in accordance with the legal requirements. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now briefly review the developments to date this year. As Mike Lewis has already explained, the sale of Uniper Hungary Energia Kft. And the North American portfolio of electricity and energy management contracts was completed in the first quarter this year. Now, these disposals were part of the conditions that Uniper must fulfill under EU state aid law. In April, Uniper and Woodside signed LNG sale and purchase agreements. These relate to the supply of up to 2 million tons per year, and this underscores the continuing strong global demand for LNG. The Supervisory Board was in close contact with the Management Board on this matter. The Supervisory Board also dealt intensively with the financial results for 2025. The day before yesterday, Uniper reported its results for the first quarter of 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings me to the end of the Supervisory Board report. At this point, I would like to express my gratitude also on behalf of the entire Supervisory Board to the Management Board and to the entire workforce for their challenging work in 2024. So thank you again very much. I would like to briefly comment on the counter-proposals published by the Association of Critical Shareholders and by Mr. Bodo Oppermann, which propose voting against the proposals on agenda items 3, 4, 5, 7 and 8. I would like to reiterate that the Supervisory Board of Uniper SE performed its duties and obligations in accordance with the law, the Articles of Association and the Rules of Procedure comprehensively and diligently in the 2024 financial year. In doing so, it also dealt intensively with the situation of the group and discussed in detail the consequences of the constantly changing energy policy and economic conditions. As I have already explained, the Supervisory Board closely monitored the implementation of the strategy towards becoming a greener electricity and gas company and advised the Management Board in its changing market environment. The Supervisory Board satisfies itself that the company has been managed in accordance with the law, its purpose and proper business practices. Therefore, in the opinion of the Supervisory Board, there is no reason to refuse to grant discharge to the members of the Management Board and the Supervisory Board who will be in office in the 2024 fiscal year. Similarly, there is no reason not to approve the remuneration report. It was prepared in accordance with the statutory provisions and reviewed by the auditor in terms of both form and content. PwC has confirmed that the disclosures required by Section 162 of the German Stock Corporation Act have been made in all material respects in the remuneration report. I've already explained the reasons for the adjustment of the remuneration of the members of the Board of Management and the proposal to adjust the remuneration of the Supervisory Board with regard to the increase in Supervisory Board remuneration, the support of a recognized remuneration consultant was also sought, who, among other things, reviewed and confirmed that the Supervisory Board remuneration is in fact in line with market conditions. I've already reported on the comprehensive tender process for the selection of the auditor, which was carried out with great care and diligence following the announcement of the tender at the end of 2023. We are therefore already in a position to present you with the corresponding proposal for the change of the auditor next year. We continue to propose PwC as auditor for the 2025 financial year. Agenda item 2 provides for a resolution on the appropriation of the net income of Uniper SE. Agenda item 3 provides for the discharge of the members of the Supervisory Board for the 2024 fiscal year. Agenda item 4 provides for the discharge of the members of the Supervisory Board for the 2024 fiscal year, and 3 was for the discharge of the members of Uniper SE Management Board for the 2024 fiscal year. Item 5 deals with the appointment of the auditor. In addition to the audit of the annual financial statements and consolidated financial statements, the appointment for the possible audit of condensed financial statements and interim management reports is also subject to the election decision. Agenda item 6 provides for the appointment of the auditor for the sustainability report for the 2025 financial year. The appointment of the auditor for the sustainability report by the AGM is being made as a precautionary measure in light of the EU directive on sustainability reporting from January 2023, which must be transposed into national law. However, such transposition has not yet been made by the German legislature. In order to avoid another annual general meeting of the company in 2025 to elect an auditor for the sustainability report for the 2025 fiscal year, the Supervisory Board proposes that an auditor be appointed at today's annual general meeting. The remuneration report will be presented for approval under agenda item 7. The remuneration report is available on the website. Agenda item 8 concerns the approval of the remuneration system and the remuneration for the members of the Supervisory Board. The remuneration system for the Supervisory Board for 2025 is also available on the website. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the agenda, and the public broadcast of this year's AGM is closed. I would like to thank all viewers for their interest in our company. Our shareholders can, of course, continue to follow the AGM via the online service.